Hey everyone, my name is Dion Woods, and this is Wealth Channels. We focus on money, personal growth, and mindsets. And if you are a mid-professional, perhaps in the investment industry, focused on private markets, private equity, private credit, maybe you're an allocator, maybe you're just an investor in a business, looking at starting a business, or maybe you're just an investor looking to diversify your portfolio. Today is definitely for you. You're not only at the right podcast, you're on the right road, because today we're going on the road to carry. And you'll understand that statement a little bit later. So my guest is actually a friend of mine who I've met, and we were introduced in the work that I do with the Dime program, Ed Ewan. And man, thank you for joining. I really appreciate this. This is going to be really exciting. Thank you.
Happy to be helpful and excited to talk.
Okay, great. So talk to me about, I know you've been in private equity for a number of years, but you're doing something really interesting. I'm actually naming this particular episode after your platform, your work. Talk to us about the road to carry.
The road to carry. I think the wordplay there is, and I'm happy to give you maybe a little bit of background on my journey, but the wordplay there is, I think people in this day and age really care about ownership, right? Whether it's translates to equity, which can a lot of times translate into wealth, or frankly, just legacy in general. So as I was thinking about, hey, I want to build my own road to equity and legacy, but I do come from a private equity background. So how can I, make it a little bit more tailored to private equity? And carry, those who we don't know, is basically a form of equity, performance-based equity that investment professionals in private equity get. So assuming the investment turns out to be a great investment, they get compensated on their carry. And so that was a wordplay for me in terms of like road to equity, road to ownership, but specific to private equity. Maybe to give you a quick background on myself, you might know a little bit of this, Dion, but I actually grew up in South Korea. My whole family immigrated to the US in middle school. And, similar to many other immigrant families, my parents were small business owners. Growing up, for one reason or another, I've always loved learning about business. I think partially it was kind of driven by, like, as a kid, I always loved learning about history, like empires. And I think there's some similarities in terms of business, like, the Rockefellers of the world and building something big. And so I, frankly, growing up, just wanted to be a legitimate business person. I didn't really know what that meant. So ultimately, I ended up going to UNC Chapel Hill, where they had a good undergrad business program. So I enrolled there, and I just stumbled into private equity my sophomore year. Frankly, this is really stupid to admit, but I thought I was applying for a consulting internship, which turned out to be private equity, or specifically an independent sponsor internship. Happy to talk more about it. But coming out of it, I knew this was something that I wanted to do, because I wanted to learn how to build big businesses. While I had an entrepreneurial spirit early on, I felt like I was too young, too inexperienced to start something out of college. So then I wanted to pursue a career that would ultimately position me to be able to build a business, and hopefully build a big business down the line. So that was kind of my reasoning into getting into private equity. And for those who may not know this, in order to private equity, there's like a very defined path, which is to go through investment banking out of university as a first job, and then you recruit into private equity out of investment banking. So I did exactly that. So I spent a couple of years at Barclays.
Still the same today? Like, is that typically the path? I mean, there's so many alternative routes that people are taking now. It's like I was a music major and now I'm in private equity. So is that path still the same, or?
It definitely has evolved. There are definitely more analyst programs out there that allows college students to go directly into private equity, but still, for the most part, the well-defined path is to spend a couple of years at a large bank, and then there's a whole recruiting process that happens. Sure. It's called the on-cycle private equity recruiting process, which is a little bit crazy.
Okay.
And so that's exactly what I did. So I spent a couple of years doing investment banking, spent the first 3 years at a PE firm called Providence Equity Partners.
Okay.
And then I spent the subsequent 3.5 years at a firm called Tailwind Capital before starting Road to Carry.
Okay. Okay. And so you were there. And so what led you to start this effort, and what exactly is this effort? Like, what is Road to Carry?
So Road to Carry today is really a network of, on one hand, private equity professionals who are interested in pursuing entrepreneurship through acquisition, whether it's through search funds, holdcos, or independent sponsors. And then on the other hand, there are investors, limited partners who want to provide the capital to these potential entrepreneurs. So that's the community that I'm building with Road to Carry, and there are a lot of different elements of that. But first and foremost, I want to make sure that there's less friction when it comes to an investment professional like myself in the past pursuing entrepreneurship through acquisition. So that's kind of my mission.
Why would mid-professional people leave a PE firm like you did, where you get potential access to carry and literally a very almost financial gold mine later? Why would you leave that and go and try to do your own acquisition?
That's fair. I mean, it is a high-paying job, and it is a difficult decision for many people. But I do think a lot of it comes down to ownership and agency. And I think at some point in your career, you realize that you've never taken a risk. Many private equity professionals have never taken a risk, so they want to bet on themselves at some point. And at a certain point, that you realize that perhaps you could do private equity investing on your own with the right support group around you, which is why you see a lot of, especially more recently, a wave of mid-career professionals pursuing, holdco, independent sponsor paths coming out of private equity.
When you say independent sponsor, you name, like you said, search funds, and you said independent sponsors. Break that down a little bit for us, unpack it.
Yeah. So there are, broadly speaking, three kind of common paths of pursuing entrepreneurship through acquisition, which basically means you go out and buy companies and you become the owner of that business. In a search fund strategy, typically you're buying a smaller and a single company, and you run that company as a CEO. So that's a search fund model. In the independent sponsor model, you're still the investment professional, and typically you're buying a bigger company that has an established CEO, C-suite team. So your role at the core of it is still an investment professional role. You're not going to fly into the company and run the company. There is a team that runs the company. And then the third model is more recent, more novel. It's called holding company models. So basically, you have a holdco at the top, and there's a ton of different subsidiaries in a specific vertical. So for example, you may have an HVAC holdco, right? That is a federation of 100 different HVACs across the country that all roll up into a single company. In that case, is kind of both an operator and investor mindset, because you do have to allocate capital in acquiring these companies, but then you do have to manage the holdco and kind of the corporate back office that you provide to these subsidiaries. So those are kind of, broadly speaking, three different flavors of entrepreneurship through acquisition today.
It sounds like those increase in terms of capital commitment as you go up. Is that true?
That is true. Yeah. So search funds tends to be on the, it's always case by case basis, but search funds are typically the smallest. Holdcos tend to get equitized in the kind of 15 to $30 million range equity to start, and then independent sponsors, it can range anywhere from 30 to 100 plus million, depending on the size of the company.
Okay, so these mid-tier individuals are leaving to go and do acquisitions and through one of these three channels, and they're betting on themselves for agency and for opportunity. As you said, they're leaving some cases carry on the table and money on the table, so it is a risk. They've got a little bit of an entrepreneurial bug. So, like, how big is your network? How many young professionals or mid-tier professionals are actually coming to join this platform that you created for them?
Yeah. So just broad strokes, Road to Carry consists of 10,000 people in the network today. I'm not going to say 100% of them are private equity professionals, but the majority of them are investment professionals at different stages of their careers, right? It could be an analyst, it could be an associate, it could be even be a partner, or we do have some founders of these PE firms as people in the network as well. But the majority of them are investment professionals in their mid-careers. And then there is also a sliver of limited partners, right? Whether it's family offices or fund of funds that invest into this ecosystem. So it's the 10,000 number is big, but I do think that only a subset of them are the private equity investment and then limited partners. And then we also have some students who are earlier in their careers.
That's pretty amazing for the short period of time. So are these individuals, they're still working in private equity, but they're coming here to sort of get this sense of community, maybe get different perspectives on how you might sort of evaluate a deal? Because I know I'm following your newsletter. We'll talk about it. We'll put that up for the viewers, but you break down deals all the time and how you look at them. So are all of these members, they've made a leap like you, or they're in various transitions?
These transitions, actually the bulk of them, if this is anecdotal, I don't have a full data visibility into this. I do think that both of them are still evaluating. They're still working inside the firms, exploring how they can make the transition. And part of what I'm trying to do is help them with the resources and the network and the education to help them decide for themselves whether or not this is the right path for them. But we also do have folks that are, and by the way, this is not like a 1 year, 2 year recent phenomenon. This has been in the works for decades at this point. And so that we do have some good examples of people that, for example, started out as a search fund, did a few deals as independent sponsors, and now actually raised a fund. And so they're running a private equity fund as owners of those funds they're relatively young in their early 40s.
Talk to us about what industries do you think are some of the most sought after industries for people looking for PE investors? Like, I feel like with the whole tech, the whole, SpaceX, there's this understanding that hundreds of billions of dollars are chasing AI and technology, space. And when those deals occur, massive multiples, and it seems like there's a lot of money being made there. Is that where all the money is going in PE, or are there other places? Like where do you find historically that PE has made money, and where do you see that being made in the future?
Yeah, it's hard to generalize because Dion, like truthfully, private equity comes in so many different flavors. Like broadly speaking, there could be value investors, there could be growth investors, there's buy and build, there's all sorts of different strategies. But I do think that at the core of it, a lot of private equity firms or investors in general are looking for businesses that have stability. So, in terms of like recurring or reoccurring revenues, where, it's reasonable to assume that the company is going to be lasting for a while and their businesses are not going to go obsolete, and that it can be a profitable business with good unit economics, and therefore your EBITDA margins, or the bottom line at the company level, can be maintained or even kind of grow over time. And so those business characteristics, I think, are frankly across public investors or private investors. Everyone looks for those types. And kind of coming back to like software, right? Before the days of AI, software businesses had all the characteristics that you would like about investing, right? It's recurring. People are buying on a subscription basis. You have a lot of visibility into future revenues. Very profitable. Like once you make software, the flow through margin on an incremental subscription is really high. And it's frankly, like with whether it's a network effect or just a virtue of products being good, it was reasonable to assume that the product has a lot of business moats around it and it can exist for a long time. Of course, I think AI has turned it around. So then I think a lot of private equity investors more recently have been looking into other types of businesses. For example, services businesses is pretty hot right now. That is frankly like AI proof, but also recurring.
That's so, like the trades, electricians, they're buying electrical companies, HVAC companies, plumbing companies. Is that what we're talking about?
Exactly. Trades, businesses, and sometimes it could even be a play on AI. So for example, like AI, it requires data centers, communications with telecom, like internet, like, those, I don't know if people notice this, but they're like telecom towers that needs to be maintained. And for example, like one area that people don't think about is like power generators. Like, hey, if data center electricity or those cell towers like losing electricity, like that can't happen. So there needs to be a backup generator, right? Who's going to maintain that? Yeah. There's a whole services ecosystem around it. Yeah. And so like that could be a trades business with an AI angle to it. Yeah. So people are, I think, trying to be creative around like how do you play some of the macro themes with existing business models.
You said, your family, you come from a background, and I think my experience has been in working with high school students who were teaching about investing. We get a large influx of Asian students, and there's a strong entrepreneurial culture in that community. Do you find that there is a reluctance to try to move from being an entrepreneur of a single business like your dad or your mom or your uncle ran to doing something that you're seeking to not do one-off, but scale it to something massive? Is that drive for that next generation? Is that something that's spurned upon, or is it just like, is it encouraged? Like how do your ancestors and how do your parents sort of view that when you come from an entrepreneurial background?
Yeah. I mean, I'll speak from my personal experience. I think this is hard to generalize, but I do think that growing up and seeing my parents run small businesses, on one hand, it was super exciting. It's so tangible, right? Like you're interacting with customers and you're there, you see it. But on the other hand, when I look back at it, things were really unprofessionalized. That's just the truth of it. For example, despite my dad being in a corporate world, like I do think that there are elements that just he didn't know about being a business owner that I do frankly learned a lot from my experience in investment banking or private equity that hopefully I can bring to the table to kind of business owners down the line. And I think that's what's happening right now in terms of, right, you hear about the silver tsunami of people, business owners that are old and retiring, and then this younger generation wanting to come in and help them out. And specifically those that come with the private equity training, they know what good looks like. They know what the common mistakes are. They know what a professionalized corporate organization looks like. And to be able to aspire towards that and to communicate that vision to business owners, I think is resonating in the market. So then the business owners, right, whose alternatives were either try to pass it down to the next generation. A lot of times the next generation doesn't want to take it. And the second option is sell it to private equity. In most cases, you'll be part of something bigger and kind of lose a legacy. Or there's now this third alternative, which is people mid-careers in private equity spinning out and telling, hey, business owner, I know all the things that private equities do as a playbook. I actually have access to capital as well. And your legacy, I will maintain, and like we'll grow this together. So this third alternative path, I think, seems to be resonating in the market. But as I look back on my experience, going back to your question, I do think part of it is like once I've grown up in the kind of corporate finance world, I've realized, like looking back, wow. I mean, I applaud my parents for what they've achieved, but business owners, small, medium business owners really, really could benefit from professionalization or just support in general. There's a next level of things that you could do with those businesses.
So if you're in PE and you're going to go and you want to you search fund, you find a business. Is it that you don't need to understand the business? Is it just understanding the business of business that matters most, and the intangibles about client relations and running your business is secondary? Because, like, fine, you see a great. I have a friend who reached out to me, actually one of my former students who's in PE, who recently just bought a healthcare company, a retired guy. And he looked at it, and margins could be improved. There's a lot of efficiencies that could be gained. They could scale and grow it. And he bought the business. I mean, he doesn't know anything about healthcare, running, nursing care or healthcare companies. But is it what's more important, understanding the business of the business, or being able to have this sense of like, I know how to run a business. I'm a entrepreneur.
I think both are critical, and I think those private equity professionals that tend to do well in the entrepreneurship through acquisition world recognize that you need both. And what I mean by that is a lot of times these business owners are great at what they do, like the day-to-day stuff, the employee management, dealing with the clients, like they're great at it, and that's why they're able to grow their business to that level. But when you're in the grind of the day-to-day, it's hard to take a step back and really think strategically. So, for example, coming back to like your healthcare company example, you mentioned that this gentleman who comes from a PE background feels like he can improve the margins. But what does it actually mean, right? My guess is that he's done a thorough analysis of like customer by customer profitability, product by product profitability. So he knows that over the next 5 years, the company should go in this direction and focus on this sub-market and this kind of customer. And therefore, he's gonna work with the owner or maybe the seller to orient the company that way. What does that mean? Maybe hire a salesperson that is gonna sell into that specific vertical that's higher margin than another type of customer, right? And then there's that kind of business P&L improvement aspect of it that you can bring to the table, but also knowing that like ultimately, like what are you building, right? A lot of times private equity builds with something, an exit in mind, right? Whether it's a 10-year hold, a 20-year hold, or a 5-year hold, you do have to have something, an end goal, right? So perhaps like the analysis that this gentleman has done is, hey, there are a lot of players out there who would be really interested in buying a healthcare company that services X markets in a Y industry. And that's what we're going to focus on. That's what we're going to build. And whether it's reorienting the sales team or buying another company that's like way more indexed into that and then merging the companies together, like that can create a lot of value, right? But it's hard to do when you're in the day-to-day grind of like, hiring somebody, firing somebody, and frankly, like, day-to-day management of it all.
So what advice you give somebody, mid-tier guy, thinking about doing sort of going out, and yours is different. You sort of created, you focus on building a company that's a platform that we discussed earlier. But what are the lessons learned? Like somebody who's coming out, thinking about going out and doing their own search fund or just starting their own. What's the one thing that you would say to them that you've seen and from the experience of all the people in your community who've tried it?
I would say like just be out there, talk to people, meet them in person. As much as I think you can do a ton of analysis in Excel and put together slides, which a lot of us are used to doing because inside a private equity firm there are a lot of stakeholders and you do have to manage that via communication and analysis. But when it comes to buying small, medium businesses, your customer is the seller and the business owner. And a lot of times, like they don't care about some random analysis or some random PowerPoint page that you put together. It's about connecting at a personal level and really them trusting that you will, when they hand over the keys, that you will take care of the baby that they've built over their entire lives. So I would say that, definitely do your desktop work, call people and learn as much as you can, but go out there and meet people and try to get a sense for, frankly, like how you can bring value to the business owners and also evaluate whether or not this is the right path for you.
What about people who just have the business idea? Like, is it always buying an existing business? What about buying a business that somebody has as an idea that they think is beneficial? How often does that occur?
I mean, I think when reflect back on my experience, I've obviously decided to, you know, pursue entrepreneurship as opposed to entrepreneurship through acquisition. Although I don't think they are necessarily mutually exclusive, right? I could always go out and acquire companies on the road to carry. But I would say that, you know, you are committing the next 5 years and potentially next decades of a career to doing whatever the next thing is. So I do encourage a lot of people to like take time off and really reflect. Like, hey, what do you want to be when you grow up? Right? Is a question that I ask myself a lot still. Hey, do I want to be an investor? Do I want to be an operator? Like, do I want to be a business owner? Like, how big of a business do I want? What kind of a business, right? Do I really want to be leading a group of, I don't know, blue collar business owners? Or do I want to be leading a group of like, you know, white collar business owners, whatever, right? Like, really think through the nuances of what the next phase of your career would look like, and frankly, what you want out of it, because now you're starting off with a blank slate, and you get to basically put whatever on paper. So I do think it's important to reflect on yourself upfront before you go out and start acquiring companies.
What about the guy who is looking for sort of the investor, right? So you've got Sam has an idea for something. Maybe he's a former PE guy. He has an idea for something that doesn't exist. He doesn't want to go out and buy it, but he wants to build it. Is what should he be thinking differently than would be if he was going to say, I'm going to just go buy something that exists and makes it better? If you have the idea that you've got something that's unique and that you think is a market opportunity, that's a very different kind of story than finding somebody who's already got some revenue history and 10Ks and Qs, and then it's just different. So what do you have you seen that? Does that happen often?
I mean, you know, you hear about those stories all the time, but I do think there's a survival bias into those stories. Yeah, I think my perspective on that is, one, investors care a lot about your right to win, whether it's the traction that you've built or some sort of a personal, professional angle that you bring to the table. It comes in so many different flavors, but you have to be able to communicate why you're the one to pursue this idea. That's number one. And number two is, frankly, like if investors say no and you feel like you're the one destined to do this, prove them wrong. I do think one of the things that I've come to appreciate right now is like, a lot of times investors themselves are wrong, and the best ones admit it and are happy to support you down the line and admit that they made a mistake. So prove them wrong, you know? It's like, you know, you hear about the stories like Canva, right? Like a lot of VCs turn her down for the longest time, and now it's a huge public company, right?
Yeah.
So if you really have something that you believe in, like don't let others say no to you. Like, you know, I do think that investors kind of love it when an entrepreneur goes out to the market and says, whether or not you're on on my side supporting this, I'm going to do it. Come along or don't. I'm going to do this.
So two more quick questions. One is, okay, you've got some money. You want to build your portfolio. You can, invest in a business, right? You can invest in a PE fund. You can just invest in a public stock, like maybe a small cap company, which is synonymous with a company. Like which is going to generate the best return and experience? Do I take my money, invest it into a actual business that exists, scale it and grow it? Do I go and maybe franchise? I mean, somebody's already got proven business model. I put my money there. Do I go with a public small cap company instead? Like, which one of those options would you say is going to be the most profitable for people, or what should they think about when choosing among those options?
Definitely not investment advice. I would say I would pull on different threads. One is passive versus active ownership. One of the benefits of owning a stock is you don't have to go and run the company or sell the company's product. As very pretty passive. And frankly, the S&P 500 has done pretty well for not doing any work besides just, buying it on Vanguard or Fidelity or whatever. So know the difference between being a passive owner versus an active owner. Because when you buy a business, an operating business, as much as there are influencers out there that say, buying a business can be passive, I think that's very rare. So recognize that if you're going to go buy a real tangible business or even like a rental property, like it's got to be a lot more active ownership than just owning a stock. So like recognize that. And I think when you start to buy operating businesses, that's when I would start to think about like, what is your right to win? Yeah. Again, now you're thinking like an investor, right? Like, what can you bring to the table that makes you the better buyer than the next guy in the room that's bidding in this company? Like, what do you know something different, or what are you going to do that's different than the other guys in the room? And then I think the last kind of perspective that I have, which may or may not change, but I've come to realize that a lot of investors, a lot of just successful business people in general, despite I love index investing and all that, but they've made their wealth in concentrated bets in certain phases of their lives. And so I do think that eventually, if that's your goal, you do have to evolve from passive index investing, which, by the way, like everyone's doing it, right? So your outcomes are going to be just similar to everyone else. I do believe in the risk return, right?
Yeah.
So if you want to create kind of generational wealth, you do have to take the risk of concentrated bets. And it may take you 5 years, 10 years, 2 years, who knows? But I do think you have to do something differently to be able to make, kind of outsized outcomes.
That's fair. So how can people who are interested, maybe they're in PE, they like to join the community, what's the best way to get involved and get connected with you?
Yeah, they can check out my website, www.roadtocarry.com, or they can find me on LinkedIn. My name, Edwin Yoon, is pretty unique, so you'll find me easily. And yeah, like if you come from institutional finance backgrounds, whether it's private equity, investment banking, or corporate development, I'm always happy to chat and try to be helpful.
Great. I appreciate it, man. Thank you for the time. This has been really informative. Hopefully, some of the viewers out there who are really interested in going deeper in this space can benefit from joining the community. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Ian. Appreciate you having me.